Hey everybody, it's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast, Cleveland Browns trade edition. Lots and lots of Cleveland Browns trade news to discuss. But first, this podcast is brought to you by Minuteman Tickets. Minuteman Tickets is a ticket broker in Columbus, and they specialize in actual human service. So you can look at their website, MinutemanTickets.com, check out all the stuff that you want to do, and then pick up the phone, save your money on fees, and get the convenience of working with real life people. Scott and Matt are there ready to take your calls, and also they're running a Minuteman Madness. Pick the NCAA pools. And you need to. This is important. So they're giving away really cool prizes, an all-expense paid trip to Fenway to watch a Boston baseball team. Second prize is an all-expense paid trip to Las Vegas to see hockey, and the third prize is an all-expense paid trip to a major conference football championship game. See if you can figure out what those are. Also, there is a WFNY channel that you can also log into. Just one entry. You can join both groups, and they have put up a special prize. Kansas City versus the Indians on a Friday night. Those tickets will go to the winner of the WFNY pool and just the winner of the WFNY pool. So there are two chances to win. You can win one of the grand prizes in the main group, and you can also win with WFNY. Thanks to Minuteman Tickets. Call them at 614-943-3000. That's 614-943-3000, MinutemanTickets.com and MinutemanMadness.com. Now, here is Mike Hattery. We're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns and all their trades.
Waiting for next year. Waiting for next year.
So the Cleveland Browns made moves.
Yeah, that's true.
Before we jumped on, I pre-recorded the intro with the Minuteman read and all that kind of stuff. So now we're diving straight into the Browns with Mike Hattery. How's it going, man?
Good. I'm glad. My live reads have really been struggling. It's if there's one thing Bill Simmons is really good at, it's the live read for the sponsor.
He's no Tony Rizzo, but someday.
Someday.
So the Browns got a quarterback, a wide receiver, and a cornerback by trading away Deshone Kizer. That move actually seemed like the weirdest one, by the way.
Yeah, this is one of the weirdest trade days in 15 years of Browns football, right? The Kizer deal was really shocking, and yet the other deals are so sort of much more important to the Browns' future that it's sort of slid under the radar in the last 5 hours. The Browns essentially just gave up on a 21-year-old they handed the keys to for 15 games in 2 seconds.
So do you figure they thought they just poisoned the well too much with that kid, and he needed a fresh start. They needed a fresh start away from him. Maybe we'll find out, or maybe they'll at least give us their spin on the record, but I can't quite figure out what they were thinking.
Yeah, I was really shocked that he was just a piece in a expiring last year of a cornerback deal. Especially, is he really that bad as a third QB in the quarterback room? I mean, I don't know. I guess it does seem like the well's poisoned. There's no reason not to think he can't be your third stringer and be kind of useful in that role. He has experience.
But at the same time, if you've got Tyrod Taylor, the Browns also traded for Tyrod Taylor, and I have no reason to believe that they won't use the number 1 overall pick on whoever their favorite quarterback is. So then what's the point of having Deshone Kizer in that scenario, I guess? I mean, they could find anybody to be a third-string quarterback, maybe even Cody Kessler. I don't know.
Kevin Hogan? I've always been a big Kevin Hogan fan. Connor Shaw? Can we bring Connor Shaw back?
I always thought that Connor Shaw could have been a backup quarterback in the NFL. That nothing more, but I thought he could have been a backup quarterback in the NFL.
I kind of feel like Kizer could have a sneaky Josh McCown career where he just sits behind Rodgers for 3 or 4 years, figures a lot out, is that sort of like quasi 28th best quarterback in the league, has a couple of years as a starter for a bad team. Like I really think that's like a Kizer trajectory at this point.
So what do you make of Tyrod Taylor? I want to be very careful with my comparison because if I don't preface it in the right way, people will think that I'm using shorthand in the wrong possible way. But because this is the Browns, it kind of reminds me of Jason Campbell, not because they're African-American or they both played similarly. They don't, but they're both like, if they were baseball players, they would both be 4A. They're capable of starting football games. Neither one is going to be a top 5 NFL starter. Both are probably a little too good to just be a backup, but neither one you're going to pin the hopes of your entire future of your franchise on.
Yeah, they're in that weird, like, I feel like Taylor's in that 18 to 22 range of NFL quarterbacks, where it's like you can sign him to a 5-year contract with little guaranteed and just hold him there until you need to turn it over to someone else. But he's also supremely watchable. Like, as Browns football is unwatchable, like Tyrod Taylor does things that quarterbacks do from time to time, and that's like kind of fun. I think he also, I think one of the things that's been interesting is like they're not good comparisons, but statistically, he has a really solid completion percentage, solid like adjusted yards per attempt. He actually doesn't look that bad compared to Kirk Cousins, which is probably a lesson in maybe $30 million guaranteed for Kirk Cousins is too much. And I've been someone who's been really pushing out the bandwagon on Kirk Cousins, but you know, I don't know. I can't wait to watch him. I think you put talent around him and a decent running back. Like they could win 6 or 7 games with everything else they need to do. I'm not saying right now, but he's watchable.
Yeah, he is supremely watchable, and I thought the Browns could have gone after Kirk Cousins, but I've also been in that kind of slightly skeptical camp that thought maybe the market wasn't going to develop for Kirk Cousins, and people weren't just going to be rushing to give him $30+ million a year and the highest amount of guaranteed money in the history of the game, despite the fact that he has played starting quarterback, he is under 30, and you know, these guys don't generally hit the open market ever.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's really interesting how much comp, like I know it's just a third, and I think it's a totally fair compensation for Taylor because, as we said, he's like one of those 18 to 22 guys. But also how much they were willing to give up comp and then what they're guaranteeing him for this season, basically, compared to just going and signing A.J. McCarron. Like there is a level of preference there. And also it like is kind of an interesting dynamic now with Dorsey and Hugh Jackson, because this definitely seems, at first blush at least, like more of a John Dorsey move than something Hugh Jackson would favor.
Yeah, I think so too. Although, you know, I think Hugh Jackson has been somewhat marginalized, and I think a lot of people are kind of falling into that Sashi versus Hugh thing. And like they hired Todd Haley, you know, they've kind of, that says something about how they were feeling about Hugh and what they think he needed to do going forward. And so I think everybody kind of wins the debates at this point.
And I think you make a good point. I think my point too is I think Taylor is probably a reflection of like where that's at this point in terms of, you know, how much power he has in the organization. And probably, I mean, I do think I really am still convinced to this day that Eric Mangini could have been a decent NFL head coach if he had someone who was a powerful GM with like solid track record. So, I mean, maybe Hugh can be that too. I don't know, but we're going to get to try it now, and that makes me a little more confident in where this is going. Yeah,
Mangini and Heckert would have been, if they would have, because Shermer wasn't ready. So if they had just kept Mangini with Heckert and maybe even Mike Holmgren, who was basically going to owners meetings and stuff. So what do you make of Jarvis Landry? I'll be honest, other than his stats, I didn't really know much about that guy. I hadn't watched a ton of him, so I'm kind of catching up.
Yeah, me too. But I do think there's something to, like, I talk to Nam about this a lot. Man, as articulate as ever. But I think with Nam and with Landry is he's someone who's constantly open, and the biggest criticism is just his ability to make big plays. And I think with a rookie quarterback, you sort of don't need that, or it's not as much of a priority if you can get it somewhere else, and B, it creates a ton of protection. And I just think Landry's sort of ideal if you're running Baker Mayfield out there in week 6, or you're running Josh Rosen out there in week 6. Partially, too, because when you have a really clean and efficient route runner, I think it's a lot quicker to develop chemistry and schematic comfort. And I think that's something that Landry can really do, especially when, I don't think Coleman's a great route runner. Njoku's just not there yet. And usually you would look to your tight ends for a safety blanket. And, I mean, Njoku and DeValve usually have to be subbed out for a blocking tight end. And when they're in the game, they're both relatively inexperienced and inefficient as receivers. There's freakish talent there. So I think, bringing in someone who's proven in terms of a possession receiver and is efficient in that way, I think it's awesome.
Well, and I definitely think that he is, and this I don't mean this as a punchline. I do think he is far and away better opportunity to contribute to the Browns than Kenny Britt ever did. I was never excited about Kenny Britt. The way that he can play should really set up well for a team with a quarterback like Tyrod Taylor, who just needs guys who can be quick, open fast in those shorter routes and do something with the ball. And he's a possession receiver.
I'm a big fan of the paradigm where I think for a long time we evaluated receivers on this single paradigm of can you be a number one, or do you have this sort of and I think the reality is wide receiver is one of the most specialized positions in the NFL, in that there's wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and then your slot wide receiver are 3 really distinct and specific positions. And someone can be a really elite slot wide receiver, be immensely valuable, and not necessarily offset your needs for an elite wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in those different roles. And I think Landry checks the boxes of being an elite slot wide receiver or wide receiver 2, and you can check that off. I mean, that's big. And so I think not getting caught up in, he doesn't have a lot of yards after catch. You need your wide receiver 1 to do that, or you need a wide receiver 2 who is a deep threat, sort of in the Deshaun Jackson mold in that role. And I don't think that's what the Browns traded for him to do. They have a specific role for him, and he's really good at it.
So how caught up do you get in what the Browns traded and the value and this, that, the other thing? I trying not to think too hard about it, just because the Browns had so many picks that they could not bring that number of rookies into camp. There is no way to improve the team by using a 3rd-round pick when you've got so many firsts and seconds.
And there's another thing to transactional efficiency, where if you have front end significant transactional efficiency, you can accept some transactional inefficiency on the back end when you're doling out these picks for players. And I think the other thing too, I also just don't. The NFL trade market's one I've long not understood that well, because you can get prime or late prime players and give up a 4th and a 7th for them, like Landry. When you're gonna, I get that you pay them and they have a cap hit, and that's important. But there's a really good chance if the Browns spent a top of the 2nd round pick and ended up with Jarvis Landry, sort of caliber player, we'd be pretty thrilled about that. That would be a huge hit on the 2nd round pick. And then we have people who are really pissed because we spent a 4th and a 7th, and we're going to pay him a little bit when we have huge cap, opening. So I don't totally get the NFL market evaluation in that sense. I think we overvalue picks pretty hardcore in some ways, in terms of youngish veterans who have been productive.
Well, and this dude is 25. He's not even 27 or 28. He's 25. And so the idea that you were going to just use that 3rd round pick and find Jarvis Landry or equivalent, it's kind of ludicrous. If you've got the cap space, that's your flexibility to go out and add that guy from a team that can't afford him or is not willing to afford him. And so from that perspective, it's the perfect use of draft picks, I think.
And holy crap, like how happy would we be if Corey Coleman had turned into what Jarvis Landry is right now and we spent a mid first round pick on him? And so I just sort of like giving up a 4th and a 7th and like a small limitation in financial flexibility, theoretically long term, you still have $80 million of cap hit, to me is like, this is a non-asset conversation. I think that's ridiculous.
So would you be upset if they play him all year on that franchise without getting him locked up for more years? Or are you kind of satisfied to see what he does and let the chips fall where they may?
I'm fine either way. I mean, I obviously would like an extension. I'd probably prefer it, but I think 4 and 7, once again, is just so cheap, especially when you're losing those picks. The Browns are still entering the draft with 10 picks. They have a ton of young guys. It's not like they have older guys that they're also cutting. You have a ton of developmental guys from the last 2 years when you've sort of gathered picks as well. So I think, like you said, I think they're best if they maybe keep 7 or 8 of their picks this year. And so I absolutely have no trouble with you just franchise deal. And if he's a great fit, he's a great fit. Or you lock him up. Either way is fine. Like you said, though, I mean, he's 25. He doesn't really have significant injury history. So I think that sort of would make me tip towards, hey, I'd like to lock this guy up. I think it's useful.
So I won't make you choose. If you have a preference, that's fine too. But are you joining the chorus of people who say no to even at this point with all the assets and the quarterback that the Browns have now acquired? Are you still firmly in the no camp on drafting Saquon Barkley?
Absolutely. You know it, Craig.
Even with the 4th pick.
Even with the 4th pick. I don't get it. I'm not that, maybe I'm not that football smart. It's very likely. I just don't. I think the Le'Veon Bell situation is like really contextually important in looking at Saquon Barkley. Bell is probably the best running back in football, and he can't get a second contract. And I think that sort of reflects the fact that teams just really don't trust these guys to age with any sort of significant value, running back specifically. And I think if you are using a top 5 pick, I'd like to have optimism that he's going to be an impact player for more than 3 to 4 years. And hopefully when my quarterback is actually ready to be, if I'm drafting a number 1 overall quarterback, I don't really expect him to be productive for 2 years to really figure it out. And by then I've wasted 2 years of a player's peak that is gone, Saquon Barkley, and I'm winning 6 games. So I just don't totally get it.
No, I'm with you as well. I would not even use the 4th pick. I wouldn't use the 4th pick. I probably, if the Browns traded down to like 8 or something, I still wouldn't use the 8th pick. I would rather have a top of the defense caliber potential player who could jump on and play defense. Just because I do think that this is something that any GM who understands football and understands scouting should be able to find with 2 attempts in any draft after the 2nd round.
Totally. It's the most fungible position in the NFL. There is just so much rampant turnover at this position. And it's one, too, that, like, really interestingly, I haven't read enough studies on this, but it seems like one where it is as inefficient as drafting quarterbacks or almost close, in that we waste a lot of first-round picks on running backs who we think are lock potential performers, and we have a lot of 4th and 5th round guys break out on that. I also think it's because teams are having a lot of success with like the split running back roles where I think the New Orleans Saints example is really good. You have Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is a pass catcher who gets 5 to 8 carries a game, and you have Mark Ingram who gets a bunch of carries. And I think that sort of shows how you can build a 2-headed monster at a position where you're keeping 3 backs anyway every year, spend a 3rd and a 4th.
Well, and I'm trying to remember the name of the Vikings running back, which kind of makes my point. But that dude got hurt, and they still kept rolling along.
Yeah. They got to the NFC title game after we said, oh, man, that offense is dead without that first-round draft pick.
Dalvin Cook. Sorry.
Yeah, no Dalvin.
It's Friday night, and we both have had some beverages, so my recall of everybody's NFL rosters is not what it could be normally.
Dalvin. I thought you were talking Adrian Peterson at first. I thought we were having an Adrian Peterson conversation. I was like, really? We're forgetting AP? Oh, no.
I would never forget Adrian Peterson, although is he still in the league? Because I actually he went to New Orleans and then he didn't make it through a season out there. Where did he go?
He's down.
He went to what, Arizona maybe? Where did he go?
I have no idea. I think what is it? There's the General MacArthur quote.
I was right.
It's like
Cardinals.
Generals never die, they merely fade away. Running backs never die, they merely fade away.
Jamal Lewis is still active somewhere.
Still active. 5 carries last year, San Diego.
With his financial problems, it wouldn't shock anybody if he tried another comeback. So I don't know. We're not used to having this much excitement. You know, it's not a trade deadline, but kind of leading up to free agency and the Browns basically dominating the trade market in a day, using their assets for actual NFL players who've done things and put stats in box scores.
Yeah, it's fun. It's kind of fun. Don't you? I just feel like what's the floor on this team now? Like, what are we saying? Are we like a 4-win team now? Is that what we're saying?
Oh, that's the absolute floor. I think the Browns turned themselves into a 6-win team.
I think so too.
I think 6 is your plus minus, is your over under, and that's the midpoint where people start betting. Maybe 5 is the over under. I think I overstated. I think 5 is the over under, and I would take the over, but barely.
I just think like a league average quarterback gets you to 4 wins so fast, 4 or 5 wins so fast, and then you have to hit at 1 and 4. And I mean, if you hit on 1, you're probably stashing a quarterback. But if you hit at 4 and then 33, and then 1 or 2 solid free agent additions, it's like 6 or 7 wins really fast. I'm crazy.
Well, and that's
every offseason.
That's one of the best things about today's move, by the way, is that I think if there was. It's not perfect. I mean, obviously, there are probably more perfect moves the Browns could have made, but I think this is one that bolsters the chances of Joe Thomas returning for at least one more year.
Yeah, that is really exciting, I have to say. And so, like, I guess we've sort of talked about Tyrod Taylor as, like, average, but what if we did rank him among the quarterbacks that Joe Thomas has played with in his career? Like, where's he at on that list?
Who, Tyrod Taylor?
Yeah.
Oh man, he's way up towards the top now. It's probably, I mean, who are the best? Who are the best? Because Joe didn't get to play with Tim Couch, so his first quarterback was what, Derek Anderson? Yeah,
and Derek Anderson might be the best quarterback Joe Thomas has ever played with. Or is that? I think that's true.
That's probably true.
And he's a backup in Carolina at like 35 years old. Yeah.
You want to talk about like a legend of like surviving in the NFL, and the backup quarterback is second to only like the long snapper.
Yeah.
As like the most envious of professional careers you can have in pro sports.
Clipboard. Got to hold the clipboard. 15 years.
And try not to look too surprised when you actually have to go in the game.
That was the big problem for Brandon Weeden, and he's kicked around longer than I thought. Is like you could tell when he went into those Dallas games a couple of years ago that he had no plans. He was like, I'm just going to cash a paycheck for another year or two in Dallas. And then all of a sudden, Tony Romo gets hurt. I mean, how do you not know that Tony Romo's going to get hurt? Like, he's gonna. Brandon, you idiot.
I think, the extended look at Brandon Weeden because Tony broke his back. I think he was not expecting that. But yeah, no. So I brought up Jason Campbell earlier. Jason Campbell's got to be one of the best quarterbacks that Joe Thomas has played with in Cleveland. Brian Hoyer.
I think I like Tyrod Taylor better than both those dudes.
I think I do too. I think he's got a better track record for what it is. And let's not pretend like playing in Buffalo was any treat for him. I mean, they had LaShawn McCoy, but they had a number of coaching changes. They had a number of personnel changes. It wasn't easy for him over there either. And he still kind of put up some stats.
They dumped his best wide receiver talent. The coach tried to undermine him by starting an absolute mess of a rookie quarterback, Nathan Peterman.
Nathan Peterman is going to go down in history.
I mean, I really do think, depressingly, Tyrod Taylor may be the best quarterback Joe Thomas has played with, if he plays with him.
Oh, this is like the perfect Twitter poll, because I think it has to be. I mean, it's not Johnny Manziel, it's not Brandon Weeden.
I don't know. Those couple games of Robert Griffin III, those were fun.
You mean the last guy to win a football game for the Cleveland Browns, Robert Griffin III?
I mean, that was like a nominal win. I'm not even sure he actually wore a jersey. I think he just took snaps.
It was Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy might be one of the winningest.
Love Colt McCoy. That little squirt gun of an arm he threw out there.
Another guy who should have been your career bridge backup. Just start him until you have something better, and let him back up forever. He would have been fine as a backup.
Charlie Fry. Why didn't Charlie Fry have a longer backup career?
That I don't know. I mean, I have some suspicions, but I don't want to say anything. It would be rude. Is there anything else that we need to talk about? I mean, this is just such a monumental sports day for Cleveland.
How fun is it? Like, I play in a 2 QB league, and I'm interested in owning the Browns quarterback this year. I'm like, man, Tyrod Taylor is an interesting 2-3 stash for me. He's a nice matchup play. Do you think he can hold off Cleveland fans' love of whoever they draft number 1 overall? Doesn't matter who, but because we've had the Derek Anderson is 10-5, gets a concussion, or what did he get? An injury, and we're cheering for Brady Quinn to enter the game. I tweeted that Tyrod Taylor can hold him off, but looking back, that was a really stupid tweet. I really wonder if Tyrod Taylor can hold off Baker Mayfield if we're 1-2 after week 3.
I think Tyrod Taylor, Todd Haley, and Jarvis Landry can hold off the rookie QB. The problem's always been that the Browns never had two of the three or three of the four things that they need working. One has always failed so miserably that the quarterback just got all the blame. You know, even Brian Hoyer, he was rolling along and he was doing his Brian Hoyer thing, and then he scuffled like Brian Hoyer is going to do, and then Josh Gordon comes back and implodes the season. And it's like, he should have held off Johnny Manziel. There's no, I mean, you listen to that podcast with Johnny on with Tomahawk. There's no way he should have ever been playing a minute of quarterback that season.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm worried. I just think, we'll see.
If I was running the organization, I would still be looking for that second quarterback, and I would leave the rookie inactive.
That's a great idea. I think we should just actively put handcuffs on the rookie quarterback and he can't practice. That seems developmentally sound.
Break his non-throwing hand with a hammer every other week so that he's on the IR. It's like the football version of Misery. I think that's a good place to stop.
That's good.
All right, man. Thanks for jumping on. This is the closest we've ever been to an emergency podcast. I hate that. The emergency podcast.
Everyone needs our analysis, Craig. We're clearly emergency level. We're right up there with major economic advisors getting called in on CNN right now.
Do you want to tell everybody what your crusade is against on Twitter?
Yeah, arguably. You know what? It's important to use language efficiently. If you have an assertion, make your assertion. And if you make your assertion, make sure you can support it. Don't hedge it with arguably. It's ridiculous. Arguably does not protect you from it being a bad take. You're just putting it there to try and avoid someone saying it's a bad take. So cut it out of there. Support your assertion or don't make it. I don't have time for that. It's ridiculous.
Be a man, be a woman, be brave.
Be brave.
Be brave. No more arguably. I think it's funny. And then after that came out in our Slack channel, I just had to do the Twitter search for all the people using the word arguably, because if something is like pet peeving you and you want to turn it around and laugh at it, just do a Twitter search for like all the people who overuse the word literally or arguably, or you'll find them, and it's hysterical and you won't be mad anymore.
Yeah, I'm really scared. I've used arguably before in my tweets. I have to go search them this evening.
You're going to delete all the tweets older than 3 weeks. All right. Well, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.